someone has a go at me on the comedy circuit, do you know the worst thing that's going to happen? They're not going to cave my head in with a knuckle duster, right? They're not going to break my legs with a baseball bat. The worst thing that's going to happen, they're going to bitch about me in a car, right? And that's it. That's all it is. Whereas these guys who I know, in their worlds, they're going to get their head punched in or they're going to get shot. So I just think, yeah, that kind of gives me a certain perspective on it. And even in the criminal world, the guys who can fight are very few and far between. Some people love a good tear up, but actually there are criminals who will openly say, oh, no, I'm not going to have a fight. I'll send my mate round. Sent mental Billy around. We'll go around and he'll have a go at somebody. And you think, yeah, God, he loves a good tear up. He does. He'll bite the guy's face off. Yeah, no problem. Job done. So it's almost, hang on, what happened to a square go? What happened to, to a fair fight? Well, there's lots of definitions. It can be quite murky. So meeting those people has actually helped me, giving me a little bit more swagger as well, actually. Tiny bit of confidence goes a long way.
Because if you can understand and deal with them, you can deal with other people easier.
Well, you can, but also as well, I've learned that not everything in life has to be extreme, because in their world, you would think that criminals, retired or not, will be sat at home plotting, stealing stuff. Let's rob a bank. Let's all just sit there all day talking about banks we've robbed. They don't. They actually don't do that. And they don't go around punching everybody or shooting everybody, because if you do, you go to jail. So that kind of gave me a different perspective. That someone said to me, look, he said, if I punched everyone in my life who deserved to be punched, I'd be a very, very busy man. I wouldn't be able to talk to you right now. And that's a very weird thing to hear. It's a strange thing, but it does give me a certain amount of perspective. As I said, I spent a huge amount of my life trying to prove myself, certain things to myself. And, the podcast came about because my missus got attacked, and I've sort of spoken about it before. And, again, I want sympathy for it. It's just very matter of fact. That's why I wanted to speak to criminals. And in doing so, I've learned a tremendous amount from them. Now, I don't big up crime. I don't think it's glamorous. I've seen the consequences of it. I've felt the consequences of it. But they're definitely interesting people. They have a wicked sense of humor. And I'm not scared of violence anymore either. Always used to be scared of violence, always worried about it. Always used to think, I don't know, am I a proper man? Well, yeah, of course I am. I'm all right. And it's quite, again, very liberating to feel that way.
And one of the things you said was, so two questions I want to ask following on from that is, like, they say that comedians and criminals are similar in some ways, in that they like to live a different sort of life than a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
What have you found the similarities between comedians and criminals and the differences?
Well, I mean, the similarities are that, we're kind of on the edge of society, really. I mean, obviously, you could say some of your jokes are criminal, but not really. I think I was in a car with Phil Cooper, lovely Welsh guy, comedian, good, funny guy. And I said to him, I don't know why I'm so obsessed with these criminals. He said, well, because they're like us. He said, obviously, we're not committing crimes. He said, but we wouldn't be able to work in a bank, or work in a call center. I mean, could you actually imagine what the comedy circuit would be like if we all worked in one big factory? It'd be terrible.
Is that because criminals, you say, they have a wicked sense of humor, because they've lived such a wild life and sometimes they're off limits? And I mean, that sort of helps with comedy, as you said before, if you're more yourself, because they're unhinged in a way. Is that like, they don't care if they get come across as this or that, because they go past those limits and they don't give a shit?
Yeah, do you know, I've never thought of it like that, but that's very astute, actually. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely bang on. I think one of the things, I love them for their humor, but I love them for the fact that they don't actually care what people think. And that's good. I'm talking about the two guys in particular that I know, Dave and Brendan, my mates. They're they don't really care what people think, and they're retired now anyway. But they're not worried about what anyone thinks, because they can't really change people's perceptions. And they kind of have fun with the fact that, I mean, Dave told me, he said, oh, I'm on a devil worshipping site. And I'm like, really? He went, yeah, they reckon I drink blood. He said, I don't. And, so obviously, And that to me is just great. It's just amazing. I'm just like, wow. I said, do you worship the devil? No, of course not. He said, I don't believe in God, let alone the devil. And then his mate takes the piss, and because they're unconventional, they attract unconventional people into their lives as well. So these two guys are swingers, and they had a disabled swingers party. So, and a woman rang up and said, "Oh, can I hire out the sex dungeon, please?" And they said, "Well, yeah, well, it's a wheelchair access." And they were like, "Well, I don't know. What's wheelchair access require?" "Oh, we can carry him in if we need to." Yeah, there's wheelchair access. And the disabled swingers had a fantastic time. Another time they had a Vietnamese rave. And it's just because that's how they need to survive. They have, so it is unconventional, and they have all sorts of unconventional people turning up. I mean, one guy showed up from Swindon and saying, "I come over on the megabus. I'm an assassin. Can I have a job?" And the boss man said, "Well, taking the piss." He said, "Well, yeah, come in." He said, "Well, so what's your choice of weapon?" The guy said, "Well, crossbow. I like to kill people with crossbows." And Dave said to him, "Well, come on in, because we'll have an interview. We're not actually recruiting for assassins at the moment." He said, "But I'd like to know what other strings you have to your bow." And I'm thinking, that's a funny line, mate. And the guy hasn't laughed at that. You know what I mean? So why are you not laughing at that? And he comes in, and the guy's got a finger missing. He said, "Oh yeah, a dog bit my finger off." And he's going, "No." And then Dave's saying, "Well, look, we're not recruiting assassins, so put your crossbow away." He didn't have it with him. He said, "But he goes, we're having a bare knuckle boxing fight at the bottom of the garden, so we need a referee." "Oh no, I could do that." He said, "Yeah, but you can't though, because you can't count anyone out because you've got a finger missing. You only better count up to 9. What if someone gets knocked out?" So they just took the piss the whole time. Someone else turned up saying, "Oh yeah, no, remember me back in the day?" No, mate, I haven't got a clue who you are. So they have to have a sense of humor, and they have to take the piss. And also, because they have criminal records and because they're known, they can't go and get a standard job in Tesco. We think as comedians, we've committed to a lifestyle. Sometimes a criminal can commit to a lifestyle so much and a life of crime so much that they can't actually really realistically come back from it. So it's always unpredictable. It's always eventful. They've and you get sort of silly moments as well. I mean, I went up one day and they had, he said, "Oh, do you want a special cup of coffee?" Well, of course I want a special cup of coffee. And basically someone had broken into a warehouse. I don't even know who it was, 2 guys, but it was the wrong warehouse. And they ended up that they had like coffee cups, little coffee cups that come out of machines, but with coffee in. So, and they stole them anyway. Then they realized, well, hang on, what if the police come around to our house and they raid us? We better get rid of this coffee. So they went around South London giving everyone all these cups of coffee. So he said, "So we've got 500 cups of coffee. So if you want a special cup, you can. You're drinking evidence. But I hope you enjoy it. If you want another one, you're welcome to get it." And I just always say to them, I can't resist. I just need to know what happens next. And we went on a road trip recently to South Wales to get a one-armed bandit and a canoe. So, it's an endless list of stories and an endless list of events. And I guess, weirdly, beneath any sort of bravado or beneath any exterior, they're kind of underdogs. And I like that.
What do you mean by underdogs, do you feel?
Well, because people don't really understand them. I think people assume that if you've committed a crime, you're always going to be that. And people evolve at different points in their life. Now, obviously, I'm not wanting to sound like a wishy-washy liberal, but I'm talking about the 2 guys that I know. They're actually very different. If I believed everything that everyone told me about my friend Dave, I would never go to his house. I've heard people say all sorts of things. And he said to me, he said, "People say I'm a child killer." He said, "No, I've never killed a kid." He said, "I didn't realize I worship Satan." But that would put me off. A child killer who worships Satan, that's pretty bad. Well, it's not pretty bad, it's awful. But he's not that. He isn't that.
He is a very funny man, and he is a very good. He's definitely a character. I've seen his interview.
Yeah.
The stuff he says.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, and they are quite ridiculous. But at some level, he's not just all that. He isn't all that. He's a very entertaining guy. and he'll say he's an entertainer, which he is, and he is. He's very funny, and yes, he's committed crimes, but a long time ago. But there's a lot more to him than that, and that's what intrigues me. So I've been trying to get to the bottom of it for the best part of a decade.
You've also run a few. You've put the two worlds together, haven't you? Like comedy and because you've invited a few of your friends onto comedy gigs. Is that right?
They've showed up. Well, the Criminals, yeah, they have, and also Dave does shows. So I've done shows for him. I did one actually after the first lockdown when it was legal to do it. I must add, we did a show in his back garden. There were 60 people at socially distanced, and I stood on a sheet of plywood that was placed over the top of his jacuzzi. So I was about 6 foot off the ground. That jacuzzi was taken from the top of an illegal drinking den somewhere. Somewhere. I can't say exactly where it was, but the police went to raid the place, and the guy who ran it locked everything up, got everyone to snort all the powder, drink all the alcohol, and stood on top of the roof threatening to throw himself off, because the police have to obviously address the issue of suicide threat, take it very, very seriously. But the upshot was that he thought, oh, there's a jacuzzi here. Oh, David probably like this. So he phoned Dave, and Dave went to get the jacuzzi, and it took a couple of days eventually to get it back, because they had to call in various favors. On the first night, someone they got a crane, borrowed a crane, but the guy had to drive away in the crane and leave the jacuzzi on the side of the road. So they got someone to sleep in it to stop people from stealing it. Then they got a lorry. Then the lorry, when it got back to southeast London, couldn't get down into the road to get to Dave's garden. So they were blocking the road up. They got 10 people to carry it in, plonked it in the garden. And that's how that got there. And I'm stood, a jacuzzi doesn't work, but I'm stood on top of this plywood over the top of the jacuzzi with a guy with a tattooed face about 10 feet away from me. He's the only one who's sort of looking at me. And so that was quite an interesting gig. It actually went very well in the end. But I could feel the plywood flexing underneath me. And I thought, people are actually filming this. If this breaks now, this will go viral. And that, and I thought, but my missus will kill me, because obviously it'll knacker my clothes and my new shoes and all that. So, it's a very, very tricky one. And I did the gig, jumped off the jacuzzi onto the floor, and Dave said, right, I'm doing my bit from down here. I'm not an idiot. I thought, yeah, great. Thanks for that. But, we had a good time. So yeah, they have come to my gigs. I've done gigs with them. I did one at Charlton Football Club, and they had a raffle, which was kind of funny, because there were a lot of kind of, I don't know whether you would call them faces or criminals, whatever you want to call them. There was definitely some active people there, and there was a raffle. And very long story short, he was trying to raffle off various things, and he said, "Oh, who wants to bid on driving a racing car at Brands Hatch?" And someone said, "Oh, come on, Dave, I could nick a better car than that, son." So he went, "Okay, who wants to bid on a knuckle duster?" And every hand went up in the room, and he sold a knuckle duster for 150 quid for charity. And again, it was fine, but I tend not to take it too seriously, because I know, and they know, that certainly the active people or the former criminals, they all know that they can beat me up. There's no doubt about it. None of them are going to be thinking, do you know what? I need to challenge myself against Matt Price. None of them are going to be thinking that. So, and it's so ridiculous sometimes that you just think, and I don't even say, this is just ridiculous. Look at you, mate. You could actually take my life and you'd enjoy it, And of course they're going to laugh. So they know who they are. So it makes it an interesting dynamic. And actually, when they came, I opened for Stephen K. Amos on one of his tour shows. A couple of the guys came along, and they sat at the back of the room. They said, "Oh, we didn't want to put you off. If we sat in the front, we thought it might distract you." I thought it was very nice. So they can be very civilized as well.